When you wake up in the morning before the world asks anything of you, before the noise starts pressing into your mind, you face a quiet moment that most people never pay attention to. It's the moment where your emotions are still unshaped, where your thoughts are still waiting for direction, where your day hasn't yet decided what it will become. And whether you know it or not, this is the moment where destiny is rewritten, not with grand gestures, not with massive life changes, but with the way you choose to rule what is happening inside you. Because the truth is simple. Your emotions will either lead your life or empower your life. They will either build your future or break your future. When you learn to rule your emotions, you aren't just managing mood swings or temporary reactions. You are seizing the steering wheel of destiny itself. People often believe destiny is some distant force, something written in the stars, something that happens to them instead of something they participate in. But destiny is not an accident. It is a design. It is not luck. It is leadership. It is the leadership of your inner world, the mastery of your thoughts, the intentional shaping of how you respond to the struggles, storms, and surprises life throws at you. When you understand that your emotions are not your master but your messengers, suddenly the power shifts. Suddenly you realize that every feeling you experience, whether it is fear, anger, insecurity, frustration, hope, excitement, or joy, is giving you information, not instruction. And when you stop obeying your emotions and start understanding them, you step into a version of yourself that you've always been capable of but never fully embraced. Most people live life on emotional autopilot. They wake up stressed because yesterday was stressful. They walk into the day already defeated because last week was difficult. They carry disappointment like it's part of their identity, not realizing they could set it down at any time. They let emotions from the past leak into the present, coloring every choice, every decision, every attempt to grow. And then they wonder why their life feels stuck, why nothing changes, why the future looks like a repeat of the past. But change doesn't start with external movement. It starts with internal authority, the authority to say, this emotion is real, but it does not rule me. This feeling is strong, but I am stronger. Ruling your emotions doesn't mean pretending you don't feel anything. It doesn't mean burying your fear or faking confidence or smiling when everything inside you feels heavy. That's not strength, that's suppression. Real mastery is about acknowledging what is happening inside you without letting it dictate who you become next. It's about recognizing that fear has a voice but not a vote, that stress has volume but not authority, that anger has energy but not direction unless you give it permission. Emotional mastery is not the absence of emotion. It is the intelligent, intentional response to emotion. Every great transformation begins with awareness. You cannot rule what you refuse to recognize. You cannot redirect what you pretend isn't there. Too many people want to rewrite their destiny, but ignore the emotional patterns that keep writing the same chapter over and over again. They want new outcomes, but hold on to old reactions. They want new opportunities, but cling to old triggers. They want a future full of purpose while allowing emotions shaped by pain to control their decisions. Destiny changes when emotional patterns change, and emotional patterns change when you decide to interrupt them. Consider how powerful emotional awareness truly is. When frustration rises, instead of exploding, you pause and ask, what is this frustration trying to teach me? When fear shows up, instead of shrinking, you ask, what strength is this fear asking me to activate? When insecurity whispers lies, instead of believing it, you ask, what truth is insecurity trying to hide from me? Every emotion becomes a doorway. Every reaction becomes a choice. Every feeling becomes an opportunity to rise higher instead of sinking lower. There is a version of you that no longer reacts impulsively, no longer gets pulled by negativity, no longer lets anger derail relationships or fear delay purpose. There is a version of you that responds with clarity, thinks with intention, and moves with power. That version of you isn't found in some distant future. It's unlocked when you decide that your emotions can express themselves but cannot control you. It's unlocked when you stop being a prisoner of what you feel and start becoming the architect of what you choose. Every time you rule an emotion instead of being ruled by it, you rewrite destiny in real time. Think about how many decisions in your life were shaped by temporary feelings, words spoken in anger that damaged relationships, opportunities avoided because fear felt louder than possibility, dreams delayed because doubt felt heavier than courage. Now imagine how different your life becomes when emotion no longer chooses for you. Imagine the relationships you rebuild, the confidence you reclaim, the goals you finally pursue, the peace you learn to protect. Destiny is not rewritten through force, it is rewritten through emotional discipline. Emotional discipline is not built in one day, it is built daily. It is the repetition of choosing clarity over chaos, intention over impulse, response over reaction. It is waking up each morning and deciding that you will not let yesterday's emotions contaminate today's potential. Every new sunrise is a new opportunity to lead your inner world before the outer world tries to shape you. It's the practice of checking in with yourself, grounding yourself, reminding yourself that you are not defined by what you feel. You are defined by what you choose. There will be days when emotions feel overwhelming, days when your thoughts feel heavy, days when the storms inside you are louder than anything happening outside. These days do not mean you are weak, they mean you are human. Strength is not measured by the absence of struggle, but by your willingness to rise in the middle of it. Ruling your emotions is about staying rooted even when everything inside you is trying to sway you. It's about staying committed to your purpose even when your feelings push you toward comfort. It's about choosing alignment over reaction, growth over avoidance, peace over chaos. Your destiny begins to shift the moment you stop allowing emotions to hijack your direction. Because every destiny has a rhythm, and emotions often try to interrupt that rhythm. But when you stay grounded, when you stay intentional, when you stay aware, you begin to create emotional patterns that support your future instead of sabotaging it. You start to feel differently, think differently, act differently, not because the world changed, but because you took command of what happens inside you. And the truth is this: ruling your emotions isn't something you do once. It's something you practice every moment. It's recognizing that your mind is a battlefield and your emotions are the fighters, but you are the commander. You give the instructions, you set the tone, you decide which emotions get amplified and which ones get acknowledged but not obeyed. The more you practice this, the stronger you become, and the stronger you become, the more your destiny begins to unfold in ways you once believed were impossible. You were never meant to be driven by fear, controlled by doubt, manipulated by anger, or limited by insecurity. You were meant to lead your life from a place of inner strength, inner clarity, inner wisdom. And every time you choose to rise above your emotions, every time you breathe before reacting, reflect before responding, and think before acting, you reinforce the truth that you are in control. Not perfect, not emotionless, not robotic, just aware, intentional, and powerful. There's a quiet power inside you waiting to be awakened. A power that becomes visible the moment you choose to master what happens within before trying to control what happens around you, because destiny is always an inside-out process. It begins with the invisible choices you make in your thoughts, your attitude, your emotional responses, because the invisible becomes the blueprint for the visible, and what you discipline privately eventually becomes the breakthrough you experience publicly. When you start mastering your emotions, you step into a realm where clarity becomes your compass, purpose becomes your anchor, and resilience becomes your natural state of being. You begin to understand that life is not determined by the storms you face, but by the strength you bring into those storms. And that strength is shaped long before the storm ever arrives. It is shaped in those quiet decisions you make when nobody is watching, those inner battles you win when no applause follows, those silent moments where you remind yourself that your feelings may be loud, but your spirit is louder. Every destiny has a defining moment where a person decides they will no longer let their emotions sabotage their greatness. It's not dramatic, it's not flashy, it's not announced. It is often a whisper inside the heart that says, I choose discipline over impulse. I choose purpose over emotion. I choose who I become next. And that whisper becomes the roar that shifts an entire life. The world may never see that moment, but they will see the transformation that follows, because when a person begins ruling their emotions, they begin rewriting every chapter of the story they are living. Slowly you start noticing you don't react the same way you used to. Where anger once controlled your tongue, now patience steps in and holds the door. Where fear once made you hesitate, now courage walks forward before your doubts even finish speaking. Where stress once clouded your thoughts, now presence clears the path. This shift doesn't happen overnight, but it happens consistently when you choose awareness over autopilot. It happens when you stop letting temporary emotions sabotage permanent opportunities. When you discipline your emotions, you begin to discover how much energy you were giving away without even knowing it. The arguments that never needed to happen, the worry that never solved a problem, the overthinking that stole moments you could have enjoyed, the anxiety that painted false disasters on the canvas of your mind, you start seeing how much of your life was spent reacting instead of choosing. And suddenly you realize how powerful it is to take that energy back, to reclaim that peace, to redirect that focus into something meaningful. Emotional mastery is the beginning of emotional freedom. Freedom from the cycles that held you back. Freedom from the patterns that exhausted you. Freedom from the thoughts that tried to convince you that you were not enough. You begin to rise into a version of yourself that feels lighter, clearer, stronger, more intentional. You begin to understand that true power isn't about defeating others. It's about defeating the parts of yourself that once convinced you that you were powerless. And as you grow, something else happens. You start seeing life differently. Not through the lens of stress or fear, but through the lens of possibility. A setback doesn't make you spiral. It makes you strategize. A challenge doesn't intimidate you. It trains you. A difficult moment doesn't break you. It builds you. You stop saying, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this preparing me for? That question alone is a sign of emotional mastery, because you've shifted from victimhood to leadership, from reaction to reflection, from survival to expansion. People will begin to notice the change in you before you fully notice it yourself. They'll see the calm in your presence, the steadiness in your responses, the clarity in your decisions. They will sense a quiet strength that doesn't need to announce itself, a grounded confidence that doesn't need validation. And this shift doesn't only transform you, it influences everything connected to you. Your relationships become healthier because you're no longer reacting from emotion, but responding from intention. Your goals become clearer because you're no longer distracted by internal chaos. Your purpose becomes louder because your mind is no longer cluttered with noise. You begin to realize that ruling your emotions is not just about controlling reactions. It's about opening doors that your old emotional patterns kept closed. You start recognizing opportunities that fear once blinded you from. You start pursuing dreams that doubt once talked you out of. You start having conversations that anger once made impossible. You start healing wounds that avoidance once protected. And little by little, you notice your life expanding at the same rate you expand your emotional intelligence. The journey isn't perfect. There will be days when emotions feel overwhelming, days when old patterns try to pull you back, days when your thoughts feel heavier than your intentions. But growth isn't about perfection. It's about progression. Emotional mastery doesn't mean you never slip. It means you rise faster with more awareness and more strength than before. You start catching yourself before you spiral, grounding yourself before you overreact, redirecting yourself before you retreat. And every time you do, you reinforce the truth that you are capable of ruling what once ruled you. There is a deeper layer to this journey that many people overlook. When you learn to rule your emotions, you discover your core identity separate from your reactions. You begin to meet the part of you that is not defined by fear, not shaped by insecurity, not limited by past pain. The part of you that is wise, strong, intuitive, and grounded. That part has always been there, waiting beneath the noise of emotional turbulence. And when you quiet that noise, your true self steps forward with clarity and purpose. This clarity becomes a guide that helps you navigate decisions with confidence. You no longer chase validation because you are anchored in self-respect. You no longer cling to people who drain you because you are anchored in self-worth. You no longer tolerate situations that stunt you because you are anchored in self-awareness. Your emotions stop pulling you into chaos and start guiding you toward alignment. You begin to move in harmony with your purpose instead of being dragged by your impulses. One of the most powerful shifts happens in how you view challenges. Instead of avoiding discomfort, you learn from it. Instead of letting emotional triggers define you, you study them. You begin to treat your emotional reactions as data, insights into what needs healing, strengthening, releasing, or restructuring. And with every piece of data you gather, your emotional intelligence deepens. You begin to understand yourself with precision. What energizes you, what drains you, what triggers you, what grounds you, what motivates you, what distracts you. This self-understanding becomes one of your greatest forms of power, because when you understand yourself, you can lead yourself. And when you can lead yourself, there is no destiny you cannot rewrite. People often talk about changing their lives, but few talk about changing the emotional patterns that shape their lives. They want new chapters, but keep using the same pen. They want new outcomes, but hold on to old emotions that keep dragging them backward. But you've stepped into a different kind of awareness, the awareness that destiny doesn't change by hoping or wishing. It changes by mastering the emotions that influence every choice you make. Some of the greatest breakthroughs in life happen quietly, in moments where you choose patience over anger, courage over fear, discipline over distraction, focus over frustration. These small choices accumulate, and over time they create a momentum that begins to reshape your entire path. You realize you're no longer emotionally exhausted, no longer reacting from old wounds, no longer letting temporary feelings sabotage long-term progress. You start feeling lighter because you've stopped carrying emotional weights that were never meant to be permanent. And as this inner transformation continues, something profound begins to unfold. Your vision sharpens. You begin to see possibilities where there once were obstacles. You begin to see solutions where there once were problems. You begin to see purpose where there once was pain. Because ruling your emotions doesn't just change how you feel, it changes how you see, and how you see determines how far you go. You start becoming emotionally proactive instead of reactive. You start preparing your mind before challenges come instead of scrambling after they hit. You build emotional habits that protect your peace. Habits like pause before responding, breathe before reacting, reflect before deciding. You create rituals that keep you grounded, morning clarity, midday resets, evening reflection. And these habits create emotional strength that becomes unshakable over time. Life doesn't magically become easier. You become stronger. Circumstances don't always change. Your capacity does. Challenges don't disappear. Your response evolves. You begin to navigate life with grace instead of panic, with intention instead of impulse, with strength instead of fear. And the more you rule your emotions, the more life begins to align with the destiny you are rewriting. Through every disciplined moment, your emotional mastery becomes a form of self-respect, a declaration that you refuse to be ruled by anything that happens within you. You choose to rise from every hardship, learn from every trigger, grow from every setback, and each choice moves you closer to the life you know you're meant to live. Not a life shaped by emotional chaos, but by emotional clarity. Not a life ruled by reactions, but by purpose. Not a life driven by fear, but by vision. And so your journey continues deeper and stronger, moving you toward a version of yourself that is not only stronger, but wiser, more aware, more intentional, and more connected to the purpose that has always lived inside you. As you grow deeper into this emotional alignment, you start to notice that life begins responding to you differently. You attract different conversations, different opportunities, different environments, because the energy you once carried, chaotic, reactive, uncertain, has been replaced with clarity, steadiness, and inner leadership. And people feel that. Life feels that. Even your own mind feels that, because the internal battles that once consumed you now bow to your discipline, your awareness, your mastery. This is the evolution of someone who no longer lets emotions write their narrative without permission. You begin to understand that emotions are powerful indicators, but they're terrible decision makers. They tell you what you need to examine, not what you need to become. They point to what needs attention, not what needs direction. And the moment why? Embrace this truth. You stop following every emotional impulse that surfaces inside you. Instead, you evaluate, you interpret, you choose. This is what true emotional intelligence looks like. Not suppressing emotions, but engaging with them from a posture of leadership rather than helplessness. There comes a moment in this journey where you realize that emotional mastery is not about controlling everything you feel, but about expanding your emotional range. It means learning how to sit with discomfort without panicking, how to witness your own sadness without drowning in it, how to feel fear without surrendering to it, how to experience anger without becoming it. It means giving yourself permission to feel fully while choosing to act wisely. This balance becomes your strength, your groundedness, your emotional flexibility. And emotional flexibility is one of the greatest tools any human being can develop, because life will always shift, people will always change, circumstances will always evolve. Flexibility keeps you steady in movement, anchored in adaptability. As you stretch into this new way of being, the inner dialogue you once had begins to shift too. The voice that once said, "You can't handle this," becomes, "You've handled worse." The voice that once whispered, "You're not enough," becomes, "You are growing every day." The voice that used to shout, "Run away from this challenge," becomes, "Walk through it with courage." And slowly you begin to trust yourself again. Trust your own thoughts, your own decisions, your own inner wisdom. That trust becomes a foundation that makes you emotionally unshakable, because doubt can no longer manipulate you the way it once did. You also begin to notice the emotional patterns of others without taking them personally. Where you once absorbed the energy of every room you entered, now you observe it with clarity. You can say, when someone else is reacting from fear, from unresolved pain, from insecurity, and instead of matching their chaos, you hold your peace. You respond calmly. You lead energetically. You influence atmospheres instead of being shaped by them. This is one of the clearest signs that you are ruling your emotions. Not when everything is peaceful, but when chaos doesn't make you lose yourself. This emotional maturity begins to reflect in your relationships as well. You communicate with more clarity. You listen more deeply. You understand more compassionately. You stop speaking from woundedness and start speaking from wisdom. You no longer react to misunderstandings with defensiveness, but with curiosity. You no longer retreat from conflict, but step into it with calm leadership. Your relationships strengthen not because the people around you change, but because you've changed. You've stopped expecting others to regulate your emotions and taken responsibility for your own state of being. That shift alone rewrites not only your destiny, but the destiny of every relationship connected to you. Even your dreams begin to expand because emotional mastery removes the internal ceilings that once held you back. You no longer sabotage yourself with doubt, delay progress with fear, or avoid opportunities because of uncertainty. You move with conviction, not because you always feel confident, but because you've learned to move even when confidence is still catching up. You understand that emotion follows action, not the other way around. And this understanding makes you unstoppable. You pursue what once intimidated you. You attempt what once overwhelmed you. You step into arenas you once avoided. And this expansion becomes the proof of your internal transformation. Another profound shift happens in how you handle rejection, disappointment, or criticism. In the past, these moments might have crushed you, sent you spiraling, or made you question your worth. But now, with emotional mastery, you see them differently. You understand that rejection can be redirection, that disappointment can be refinement, that criticism can be information. You no longer let external feedback destabilize your internal identity. You stand tall, grounded in the truth that your value is not up for debate and your destiny is not dependent on others validating it. When emotions no longer control you, you become more powerful than ever imagined. You reclaim hours of your life previously lost to overthinking. You reclaim days once wasted on emotional recovery. You reclaim years once stolen by fear. You reclaim dreams once buried under insecurity. And with every part of yourself reclaimed, you create space for purpose to grow, for vision to flourish, for creativity to rise, for resilience to solidify. Your life becomes a reflection of inner order rather than inner chaos. This mastery also transforms your future because the choices you make are no longer shaped by emotional turbulence, but by intentional clarity. You invest your energy wisely, you protect your peace fiercely, you nurture your growth consistently, you stop saying yes out of guilt, fear, or pressure, and start saying yes out of alignment, authenticity, and purpose. You stop abandoning yourself to make others comfortable. You stop settling for less than what aligns with your worth. Every decision becomes a reflection of emotional strength rather than emotional instability. In this new state of living, you begin to appreciate the subtle but powerful moments that build your emotional strength. The silent pauses, the deep breaths, the choice to step away rather than explode, the willingness to reflect rather than react. These small victories create a foundation of emotional power that makes you resilient in the face of adversity. They make you adaptable when life shifts unexpectedly. They make you grounded when challenges come in waves. This foundation becomes your emotional armor, not the kind that shuts the world out, but the kind that allows you to walk into the world without losing yourself. The more you grow, the more you realize that emotional mastery is deeply connected to spiritual grounding, not necessarily in a religious sense, but in a sense of being deeply anchored in your inner truth. You begin to trust the timing of your life. Trust the lessons that come your way. Trust the strength that continues to rise in you. You attract clarity because your emotions no longer distort your perception. You attract strength because your resilience has been tested and refined. You attract peace because you consistently choose it. And as all these changes continue unfolding, you begin to see the real power behind ruling your emotions. You become someone who can lead not only yourself, but others. You inspire people not by what you say, but by how you live. You become an example of someone who rises above turmoil, who grows through difficulty, who stays calm in chaos, who moves with purpose even in uncertainty. Others begin to feel safer around you, more understood around you, more uplifted around you. Your emotional leadership becomes a gift to the world because stable people stabilize people. You start viewing every day as an opportunity to reinforce your emotional power. You understand that you are always one decision away from strengthening or weakening your emotional discipline. So you choose the decisions that elevate you. You choose to think before reacting, choose to breathe before speaking, choose to listen before assuming, choose to understand before judging. And with every choice, your emotional strength grows deeper roots. Even your inner storms begin to feel different. Instead of drowning in them, you stand in them with awareness. Instead of panicking, you observe. Instead of spiraling, you stabilize yourself. You become the calm inside yourself. You become the grounding force in your own life. That alone rewrites destiny more than anything else ever could. Because the truth is this: destiny is not written in the stars. It is written in your decisions, in your discipline, in your emotional mastery, in your willingness to lead your inner world with strength and purpose. And every single moment you choose awareness over autopilot, intention over impulse, growth over reaction, you step further into the destiny that belongs to you. And so you continue becoming stronger, clearer, wiser, more aligned with every breath you take, every emotion you witness, every moment you choose to elevate yourself from reaction into leadership. Because each choice you make shapes the architecture of the life you are building, and the life you are building is no longer designed by emotional chaos, but by emotional clarity. As you move forward, the inner landscape of your mind feels different, steadier, quieter, more intentional. You start recognizing that peace is not something you find outside, it is something you cultivate within. You begin to appreciate the power of a calm mind, a steady heart, and a centered spirit. These qualities do not come from avoiding emotions, but from learning how to navigate them with wisdom and grace. You notice that your reactions have slowed down, not because you're suppressing yourself, but because you've gained the maturity to pause, observe, and choose. You no longer rush into emotional decisions. You no longer let impulsive feelings dictate actions that shape years of your life. You understand now that emotions are temporary, but consequences are not. And this understanding alone separates you from the version of yours, Elf, that once acted out of fear, anger, confusion, or insecurity. You've grown past that. You've evolved beyond that. And that evolution continues every day you practice emotional mastery. With each passing moment, you realize the depth of transformation happening within you. You're no longer intimidated by your own emotions. You welcome them, you listen to them, you learn from them, you treat them not as enemies, but as teachers. And each emotion has something to say. Fear teaches caution. Anger reveals boundaries, sadness reveals depth, joy reveals gratitude, frustration reveals limitations that need expanding. You begin to read your emotional landscape like a map guiding you through the next stages of your journey. As you walk through life with this new awareness, the challenges that once shook you now sharpen you. You move with a collected presence, aware of what is happening inside and around you. You see the world clearer because your inner world is no longer fogged by emotional storms. This clarity becomes a rare advantage, a strength that very few develop. People start seeking your presence because your emotional stability brings comfort. Your calm brings reassurance. Your perspective brings wisdom. You become someone others trust, not because you're perfect, but because you're aware, grounded, and emotionally responsible. This responsibility begins to reshape every part of your life. In your work, you no longer crumble under pressure. You thrive in it because your mind stays clear even when circumstances get messy. In your relationships, you no longer respond with ego, but with empathy. And because of that, conflicts no longer become wars. They become opportunities for connection, understanding, and growth. In your dreams, you no longer hesitate. You move forward even when emotion is uncertain, because you've learned that the heart doesn't always feel ready before it steps into purpose. And as your emotional strength expands, so does your capacity for patience. You stop rushing your growth. You stop demanding instant results. You understand that building a powerful inner world takes time, and you are willing to invest that time. You begin to see growth not as a destination, but as a rhythm of becoming, shedding, learning, unlearning, rising, and refining. This rhythm becomes a quiet symphony inside you, shaping the way you think, act, speak, and lead. One of the greatest gifts emotional mastery gives you is resilience. Not the loud kind that tries to look strong, but the silent kind that simply refuses to break. You learn how to bend without snapping, adapt without losing yourself, recover without resentment, and continue without hesitation. You become resilient not because life becomes easier, but because your emotional capacity becomes stronger. Problems don't shrink, you grow. Obstacles don't disappear, you outgrow them. Challenges don't end, you elevate above them. And with this resilience comes confidence, not the superficial kind that seeks approval, but the deep kind that comes from knowing you can handle whatever comes your way. You trust yourself now. You trust your ability to navigate uncertainty, to stay grounded under pressure, to rise again after falling, to choose wisely even when emotions pull you in different directions. This self-trust becomes a compass that guides you with steady assurance. You are no longer looking outside for answers that have always lived inside. As you evolve, something profound begins to shift in how you experience time. You stop living in the past emotionally. You stop letting old wounds define new experiences. You stop letting old fears shape new decisions. You stop letting old stories limit new chapters. And you stop letting old emotions invade new moments. You start living the present with intention, awareness, and gratitude. The present becomes your playground instead of your prison. You engage with life as it unfolds instead of replaying what has already faded or fearing what has yet to arrive. And with this presence comes awareness of how precious your energy truly is. You stop wasting it on arguments that don't matter, people who don't grow, situations that don't align, and emotions that drain more than they teach. You protect your energy like a priceless resource because you now know its value. You invest it in growth, in purpose, in clarity, in relationships that elevate you, in dreams that shape you. This shift in energy is one of the clearest signs that you are building a destiny based on wisdom rather than emotional impulses. You also begin to understand the beauty of emotional boundaries, when to speak and when to stay silent, when to engage and when to withdraw, when to give and when to protect, when to confront and when to let go. These boundaries become the backbone of your emotional health. They ensure that you no longer bleed emotionally in places that do not deserve your vulnerability. They help you preserve your strength, maintain your peace, and align your actions with your purpose through this journey. You start noticing the quiet victories that used to go unnoticed, walking away from what disturbs your peace, choosing understanding over assumption, choosing honesty over ego, choosing discipline over temptation, choosing patience over frustration. These victories are invisible to the world, but monumental for your destiny. They compound over time, reshaping your identity into someone who does not just feel powerful, but lives powerfully. As your emotional world strengthens, your identity becomes clearer. You stop asking, who do others need me to be? And start asking, who am I truly becoming? You stop living for expectations and start living for alignment. You stop chasing who you were and start embracing who you are evolving into. And this evolution brings a deep sense of authenticity, where your actions match your truth, your choices match your values, and your emotions match your intentions. And then comes an even deeper transformation, emotional neutrality. This is not the absence of emotion, but the ability to feel deeply without losing balance. It is the ability to observe your emotions without merging with them. You feel emotions fully, but they no longer hijack your thoughts or dictate your direction. You give emotion its moment, but not your momentum. You give emotion its voice, but not your leadership. You give emotion its space, but not your seat at the table of decision making. This neutrality creates emotional sovereignty, complete inner freedom, freedom from being triggered by everything, freedom from being controlled by temporary feelings, freedom from emotional addiction to drama or chaos, freedom from old emotional wounds that once dominated your life, and freedom from the need to react to everything that happens around you. With this sovereignty, your perspective expands. You see life from a higher vantage point. You see situations with a maturity that most never reach. You see yourself with compassion. You see others with empathy. And you see your destiny with clarity. You begin moving with intention, choosing from a place of wisdom rather than emotional turbulence. And the journey continues moment by moment, breath by breath. As we reach the end of this journey, remember that the strength you seek, the clarity you desire, and the peace you long for are not found in the noise of the world, but in the quiet moments when your heart turns toward God. Every morning is a new invitation, a fresh chance to step into His protection, His purpose, and His promises. Let His words guide your steps. Let His presence calm your storms, and let His light shine through your actions. You were never meant to walk alone, never meant to carry the weight of life by yourself. God goes before you, stands beside you, and watches over you. So rise every day with confidence, knowing that no matter what challenges come, you are covered, you are protected, and you are strengthened by a power greater than anything you face. Let this truth shape your mornings, guide your decisions, and empower your faith. And as you move forward, may your life become a living testimony of courage, hope, and unshakable trust in God's divine protection. Go forward with peace, with boldness, and with the assurance that God is with you today, tomorrow, and always.